Good morning to most of you. Good afternoon. And to our friends overseas, good evening. And welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast, free show edition, where we do not have a champagne room after an hour. The whole show is a VIP luxury behind the velvet rope experience. I do want to say, if you guys haven't seen it already, my co-host, my homie, my dog, Pascal Robert, recently was on Crystal Ball Show with Kyle Kalinske. And I recently was on, or it's finally aired, Diet Soap with Doug Lane talking about the latest video essay, same as it ever was. And also, I recently did an interview with Dr. Harriet Fraud on her show, It's Not All in Your Head, where we had a very, very deep dive conversation about the unhoused and how housing is not the only answer. It has to be a little bit deeper than just housing. That being said, let me bring in my celebrity co-host. His eyes is rolling in the green room because he's like, I know. It's not even like because I call him that. It's just because he's like, I know. It's a lot. It's a lot to handle. These shoulders are big. It's a lot to handle. Please welcome the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles. We are all celebrities.
Our guest today is a bit of a young celebrity, as he is running for office, and he was late, and I will blame it on his being black because I'm now an Afro pessimist.
Oh wow!
And if racism is eternal, so is Negro tardiness. Take that. Let's bring in our other co-host, my friend in real life. I can say he's my friend in real life. I do want to embarrass him before he comes on. Our other co-host lives in the Virginia area and came to see me in DC. It is a train ride away. And he walked in the heat. It was the first hot day in New York, and the under boob sweat that he had on his shirt. A lot. Please welcome Marcus of the Left Flank Vets.
And that's what he got. I'm proud of it.
So, Marcus, Jason is basically trying to suggest that your titties were sweating.
That's true.
That's a technical term.
My man titties were sweating like a motherfucker. Well, so I'm walking through, and that's right. It starts out, it's about 10 a.m., 70 degrees. By the time I get stuck in New York Pride, I have to walk about 5 to 6 blocks out of the way just to get to Jason. I was a whole damn mess. I was a whole sweaty ass mess.
Poor Marcus.
Not afraid of it.
I was like, oh, it is hot outside. I can tell that he is that.
If I was 10 minutes before, I would have been fine. I would have been able to sneak through, but then but that's literally the same day was New York Pride and humidity. That's what I had. But I came prepared because that's the thing is as I was talking about it, bam, popped off the t-shirt, had another one in the bag, and I'm good to go.
Now, I would have given Marcus a shirt. I did bring extra shirts with me. They are also extra small. So seeing 6'5" Marcus in a mini tight tee would have been equally as hilarious.
Yeah. No.
There were a lot of crop tops that day.
There were a lot of crop tops.
A lot of crop tops. I think you can pull it off.
I've seen pictures and I've learned that you don't telegraph your actual height on this show at all. Because apparently you're the Jamaican version of the Jolly Green Giant.
Yeah, Patrick Ewing is his actual name, but yeah, that's
Alfie is tall. You met Alfie, right, Marcus?
Yeah, Alfie's got a few inches on me, but that's the thing is my angle is down, So like most people think if you're gonna meet me, this is the view. But no, that ain't it. You're getting this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Marcus.
From below.
Marcus, you're what, 6'3", 6'2", 6'3"?
Nah, I'm like 6'1". I 6'2" on the
Oh.
programs, you know. But
Are you only 6'2"?
yeah.
Nah,
size
he's like
13?
6'17".
Tucson is also 3 apples high.
What?
You have to remember that Tucson is 3 apples high.
Yes.
Yeah, well, Marcus is up in the
Trump says he's
nosebleed.
5'5". That's not that short.
It's not that short.
Who's 5'5"?
Damn Tucson.
Tucson's
Yeah.
not 5'5".
You know what though?
What?
Strom got me.
You thought he was gonna be taller?
Well, no, because like literally, like his avatar,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, they described. I was like, okay, I thought Strom was like a 75-year-old country white man, and then they
He
were like,
looks his age when you see him in his face. He has a
well,
young-
like, yeah, he is a 75-year-old white man, but in like a 30-year-old white man body.
yeah, he's got a young face. He really does. You see his face. It's a young face. He's actually a very youthful spirit, man. I actually like Strom.
Yeah.
I figured Strom can make you a good
Mint julep.
mint julep, yeah, on a nice sweltering summer day.
But did he look like the white Cat Williams? That's the question.
wow.
That's true. That's true.
You know what's funny? He didn't have to say shit. He's one of those guys that doesn't say shit
Mm-hmm.
at all.
So he had that like long string that you think is a tie that they wear in the South.
Yes.
He's that guy.
Mhm.
He is that fucking guy. And his hair, impeccable. Strom with a flat iron is like a black non-owner in Atlanta.
Like that's yeah. Like take the avatar, make it real person. Strom's not catfishing. There's no fakery about it.
There's no fakery.
What is advertised is what is delivered, and I appreciate that type of sincerity.
I
It's
do.
not catfishing.
Yeah, again, that was a lot of fun. I know I saw Ben Burgess is getting some shit from the debate. I guess they aired the whole debate, and you can hear me and Kuba in the background, right? Did you watch it, Marcus?
No. I can't. It's hard for me to get through some of this shit. You know, the debate stuff.
Well, those people are really they're not honest actors, right?
Yeah.
That's-
This is what, like, you know my opinion. I don't feel like a lot, like most of the, like, you know, the debate bro scene is is like honest or dishonest. You know, like I think more of them coming out like, you know, I'm this professional wrestler. You know, I go in the cage. This is my character. That's who they play. You know, it's just dealing with politics or history in some loose fashion.
It did wake me up to some things actually, and especially after the fact when we were talking about people being really happy Ben was there that were to the opposite, but they thought of his opinions, and it's got me looking at the stuff in a new light, and I am working on a new video essay. I thought I was going to retire. I feel like Pacino in The Godfather, but a nice gentleman reached out to me that is a graduate of Cal Arts Film School, and we had a very good conversation, and is going to help me with some of the visual elements of it. Where I'm gonna pull a Pascal and I'm just gonna write the script, and say it, and then like, hey Negro, you do this, and walk away. So August 10th will be part 1. It's going to be a long series, but the first part is going to deal with pro wrestling. I don't have a music title for it yet. I'm thinking of one that it's about living in the era of kayfabe. So be prepared.
And like, I don't know. That's like one of those things where it's like I hate that pro wrestling has like way more to say of our society than like I'd actually want to believe, you know. But there's just so much there, right? There's a lot there.
You know what's funny? I thought more people were going to get mad at the blaxploitation essay, the last one. because I think that's kind of a sacred cow, is actually kind of taking a look at how these movies got made, why they got made, what was kind of the end result, how a lot of people looked at the one success of Black Power was this short 4-year term in cinema. And actually what it led to was Black people actually owning studios and production companies and becoming actually major players in film is what you get forward after this era. And I thought calling out Wakanda was going to get a lot of heat. No. It was shitting on Afro-pessimism.
I knew that was going to happen. I wasn't surprised by that.
That's what got all the heat. That being said, we are getting into my favorite part of the show, where we try to trigger Pascal. I was this close to doing it by just reading the comments. I was like, no, that's going to trigger me. And I already woke up today after I stretched and exercised. Water got shut off.
Mm-hmm.
Good times. Had to take one of those bucket showers we were talking about, Marcus, where you can.
Yeah, 3 water bottles. You can get 3 12-ounce water bottles. You can shower. You need a rag too, or a t-shirt. Maybe you got under titty sweat, and the t-shirt can also be used as the rag.
I found this news story. It showed up in my YouTube timeline for some reason, which makes me think that I watch some weird shit. But I think we can have a very good discussion about labor, the tech industry, their war on labor, the idea of what is an employee and what is a contractor, and we can also talk about Florida, where Pascal now calls home, this land of very insane white people that do the most insane shit I've ever heard of in my life. Pascal lives not too far from the Church of Scientology. Did you guys know that?
Well,
Is that right?
No, that's not true.
don't they have like a few
The main
actual
place
like
is in, I
huge?
think it's Clearwater. It's actually kind of far from Pascal.
Oh, okay.
It ain't that far. But it's far.
Pascal, you be wrestling alligators down there.
Why do you think he didn't make the show in New York?
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
He was wrestling an alligator. It's just,
Though I wouldn't mind tasting some alligator, though.
I haven't had
Yikes.
alligator since Louisiana.
It's not bad. It's not bad. It's a little
It's like
chewy.
fishy chicken.
Yeah, exact. Yes, that's a good
Have
way
you
to put it.
tasted tofu? Also good.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you say tofu?
Yes.
That sounds like alligator.
Here. So Pascal, get ready for this. Can you guys hear?
Yep.
Yeah.
Psychologist, because it really was like emotionally traumatizing for me.
That Uber driver says he was scratched, strangled, and bitten by his passenger. And today, he shared details about his horrifying experience exclusively with 8 on Your Side. Christine McClarty joins us live from Pinellas County. You can tell he is still shaken, that driver, Christine.
He really is. He says the whole 10-minute experience will stay with him for life. He says that he was in the driver's seat of the Uber when the passenger sit.
Now, first of all, I've never seen this before in my life. A news reporter doing a story about an Uber driver, and she had to let you know it was a news report about an Uber driver because she's literally in the car, buckled in.
So that's 10 out of 10 shit. You don't get journalism like this anymore.
I was like, is this bitch in the car? She buckled in the car. An Uber driver in the car like this with the seatbelt as so.
Oh my god.
So I will here. We have to watch what happens. For a while, my lady friend is here with me. We were watching this morning. We were arguing if this was real or if this was fake at all, because you just have to see. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. You have to see. Have you seen this before, Marcus?
No.
Okay.
sitting right behind him, lunged forward and began strangling him. 22-year-old Mike Jr. says around 5 o'clock Saturday night, he responded to a ride request in front of Ask Social Kitchen in Tampa.
I called the Uber for my mother. Can you please get her home safe?
Hassey Jr. says 55-year-old Michelle Stillwell was asleep most of the ride until a few blocks from her home in unincorporated St. Pete.
Starts screaming some curse words at me, slaps me in my face.
Screaming, "My daughter," while scratching, strangling, and biting him. Deputies believe Stillwell was intoxicated.
It's like reliving a horror movie.
He wants to know why. We went to Stillwell's home for answers.
Oh my
The
God.
big question, why the attack happened on Saturday? No answer.
Uber is who I was driving for at the time, has not done a single thing.
Hassey Jr. says he's called Uber and is disappointed that no one has reached out. 8 on Your Side reached out on his behalf. An Uber spokesman responded saying, "What's been described is disturbing. Violence of any kind is..."
So I wanted to talk about this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now, all jokes aside, the leverage she got, she didn't hit the choke right, because if so, he would have tapped.
Yeah.
She didn't have the right pressure point, right? You need that forearm on the carotid.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. You want to do a blood choke, not an air choke.
Yeah. So that's where you needed it. So she needs to watch more LAPD videos pre-1984. She would have known where to put that pressure on the carotid. He would have been out.
Knocked out.
And she could have been champion of Uber passengers. There was an interesting comment. So I read the comments in this video, and there was an interesting comment where someone said, and I've heard this before from other friends of mine that are Uber drivers when I lived in the Bay Area. And one comment was, "We can't turn down rides because we lose promotions and bonuses. So drivers are penalized for not taking all riders." Now, Uber removed the lady, whatever that means, from their system, but it's extremely easy to create a new account or ride under someone else's name. So there really is no penalty for riders because Uber's never going to press charges. That's on the driver himself to press charges.
Which, and I guess I don't know. I would like to try and make the difference in something that's like in a better taxi, like unionization, or at least like system. I mean, this could be that'd be a similar problem, wouldn't it? Where like, someone could ride a taxi, attack someone. How does, I guess, that information disseminate? And especially if someone could just like wave their hand, and they pull up, I don't know. I guess like, how do we actually keep people safe from like potential repeat?
Well, we rode in a bunch of cars that had the plastic.
That's
glass
yeah.
The drivers. I think a lot of that was from COVID, but well,
that was beforehand too. Yeah, word.
What is your first reaction besides the fact that it is kind of crazy that woman did it?
Why does that woman look like she's 75 years old?
She looked like a demon.
Maybe
that picture of her and her eyeballs.
She's 55. They said she's
55.
Yeah.
Oh, well, those people tend to smoke and age poorly.
Oh.
My second question was the car moving when she started choking him, or was the car standing still?
That's what I'm wondering too.
He pulled over.
She just woke up in a haze and then just started attacking.
Yeah, she said she woke up and said, my daughter, my daughter." Apparently the woman was drunk, and he got a message or whatever. They were like, "Hey, can you please get my mom home safe?" And
does alcohol do that to you?
I don't know, but an ass
drivers
covered her up real good. Because I probably would have turned around and lost my goddamn mind had I got bit and choked like that.
Yeah.
But I found apparently this is Uber's, what you see on the screen is Uber's standard response, because this has actually been happening a lot. There was another situation in San Francisco a few months back where some young ladies had got into an Uber and were really, really rude. And the driver was like, well, you guys have to leave. I don't want to do this ride. And they started hitting him. This is a common occurrence.
Yeah. So I guess, that's something that, like, without even thinking, it was like just having that separation, right? That little fucking wall. Like, and like, I don't know. It's sad, but like, I guess, yeah, that's like just a fucking, seems like a basic work protection at this point.
But they're independent contractors.
Well, and this is, that's the fucking problem. That's the problem. And I'm guaranteed, like, even if they weren't, you're still gonna have that issue, right? That I think that's like that next layer of actually having something that, some barrier that's guaranteed to be put in, and like if they were all union employees, that wouldn't necessarily get them that, but at least it'd give them a chance to fucking.
Well, you could fight back. I mean, someone says they don't allow drivers to turn down rides because they would be accused of discrimination and get sued. And then there was other people in the comments talking about they drove Uber Eats and got robbed, which I'm like, why would you rob an Uber Eats driver? They don't carry cash.
Kind of futile, don't you think?
That seems like the dumbest shit ever.
For dinner?
Yeah, what do you rob? Like, have you?
Like,
what are you gonna get?
At that point, it's like literally that the dinner, a phone that can be tracked.
Break yourself, fool! And it's like, all they wanted was 2 McDonald's pies. It's 1 a.m.
What the fuck?
What are you?
You have a problem? I don't know.
I will say this. One night, my daughter and I had ordered food when I lived in West Oakland. The only way you're going to get food after like 6 o'clock was to order it, and I didn't have a car at the time, and so we had ordered food late because we were watching horror movies, and it had been over an hour, and so I sent a message, and I didn't hear a response, and then I think they were yelling in their car and had the verbal text message thing on, so the message they responded with, "Shut up, bitch! I'm coming." I was so shocked. I couldn't even get mad. And I'm sitting there with my kid, and she thinks it's hilarious, right? So she's cracking up. And she's like, "Dad, oh my God, you should get so much free stuff from that."
Yeah, right. That's exactly.
And so I go out to get the food, and because it's actually, in all fairness, where I lived then was very scary because it's the end of a road. There's a massive homeless encampment where people literally have the big barrels on fire and shit. That's all in front of my door. And so when you pull up, they used to get scared and would just like take off. So I go outside to like meet him in the middle of the street, and it was a man and his significant other and some children in the back seat. And this is like 1, 2 in the morning, and they're delivering food, and they were very, very apologetic. Like, so sorry, we didn't say, like, there was no way he typed that. I know he was yelling something and the voice thing was on.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny, but he just had this look of like, please don't be mad at me, please don't kill me, because he also was pulling into a very dangerous part of Oakland. I was like, no, I'm not going to kill you, but you did just make for some great show material. But on that note, let's bring in our guest. He is running for Oklahoma State Representative, District 97.4. He also is a big fan of Music I Hate. He invited me on his show some time ago to talk with me about Music I Hate. And we talked for 3 hours. He actually is a very, very cool young man, and I'm actually excited for his run in office. Please welcome Gregory Hardin Jr., third.
All right. See, Jason, you made it seem like he was gonna be one of your metalhead type, tattoos all over. This is an upstanding, citizen-looking young man right here, man.
Well, he's got a different shirt on because he's running for office. Yeah. What's going on? I can't hear you right now. You look like silent film. Do 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 do. You young people are supposed to know how technology works.
Mm-mm.
This is a damn shame. I'm gonna let you figure this out, and I'm gonna make fun of you while you're figuring it out.
What was the band? What was the?
He makes incendiary comments on the internet about how Metallica is not as good as Korn, and
Metallica is not
What?
as good as
yeah,
Korn.
he's young. These young people like to make incendiary comments to rattle the old people.
Because if now like I don't.
Is not Metallica the introduction of the world to heavy music?
Well, he's also 20 years younger than me, so his introduction to heavy music is going to be things that I found kind of despicable, like Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park and shit like that. So everybody's introduction isn't going to be everybody's cup of tea. And in all honesty, I'm totally joking. We actually had a very, very good conversation about music, because it is all music that I've listened to, and I have an opinion about that isn't all old man yelling at trains. Is your sound working now, Greg? What did you do to your computer? Do I got to go to Oklahoma right now to show you how to work this?
We got to knock some doors too. Actually, it's like I don't know if this is a hot take. Isn't Korn just like the reiteration of Metallica? Like it's
Hell no.
It's just
No.
a second thing over.
Not at all.
That's what I hear. Less
No.
makeup on one side.
What?
You almost made me spit this out. Korn is what happens when you take Bakersfield seriously. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. I've had bad experiences in Bakersfield. I can't have you people hitting me. Someone says Green Day is the GOAT. Ivan, on that tip, I just connected with the man that directed the documentary about the East Bay punk scene, and he's coming on the show in a couple weeks, so we're going to do a whole show about that. It's going to be fun. Greg, is your volume working yet?
Yo, Shirley said,
Let's see.
Yes.
there we
Can
go.
you guys hear me now?
Yes,
Yep.
yes, yes.
Yay.
All right. I hope this isn't how your campaign's been running.
Oh.
About to say.
Ouch.
Oh, well.
How are you?
I am doing all right.
How's the campaign going?
It exists. I can definitely say that. No, I'm kidding. It's going well. I've been, hosting fundraisers every month. I've been out knocking doors. I've been talking to people, getting good responses. It's been interesting.
And
What are the negative responses like?
Usually just people not really wanting to talk to anyone or being bothered with someone coming to their door. Haven't really had any conversations where it turned negative yet. But, it's early, so, there's still time for that.
Are you doing the things that we think the young politicians should do? Are you going to the churches? Are you going to the community centers?
So I haven't been to any churches yet, at least. I've mostly just been at some community events. I've been mostly just knocking doors and stuff like that when it comes to talking to voters. And
Do you want me to go
occasionally
with you to
some
the Black
community
Church?
events. It'd be interesting. There are actually there is a couple of black churches in my district, ironically enough.
Or do you want me to be your escort into the Black Church with you?
you can't
You'd
show
like
off your
to
taco
come?
meat, though.
I mean, I think he's got the melanin. He's got the complexion for the protection. I mean,
But I don't know
And
if he's going to be ready when they start shouting in said church. So I don't know if he's going to be ready for
Oh, I've been to a black church before. I know what goes on there.
I know what happens in those locations.
Greg, I love his affectation. He's like, I've been to a black church before. I understand.
I know you people in your worship.
I understand the logistics of the worship room.
Greg, do you want us to both go into a black church with Slayer shirts on?
With Slayer shirts?
Mhm.
Okay. I want to wear a Limp Bizkit shirt, honestly.
Why
Okay.
why do you want to lower my property value? Why? Why? Why does this happen? I'm trying to
Representative.
help the campaign out, and you want me to come in there and all of a sudden be a joke.
I got an actual question. Greg, can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about the district, about the community? We know that it's got a few black churches, but what is it like? What's economic situation? What are people's lives like? And I know that you literally born and raised in your where you where you're running. So yeah, tell us about where you grew up.
Yeah, so in terms of demographics and things with the district, black people aren't actually a huge part of the district, though there is, a black community within the district. I think we're only 4 or 5% of the district. But
Hardin family?
20, say what?
Is it just the Hardin family?
No.
Big Hardin family.
Believe it or not, we are not the majority or even plurality of black people within the district. But let's see, 20% of the district, I believe, is Native American.
Okay.
About 4 different tribes have jurisdiction within my area. And then there's a small percentage of Hispanics, and then small percentage of Asians, and then altogether it's about 70 to 60% of white people. So it's not an entirely super white district, but white people are still technically the majority. And then it's really working class. There's a small portion of upper to middle income, affluent type people in the district, but for the most part, it's working class. And then about 30% rural, I would say, and then urban, a little urban. But the urban we're talking about here is a 30,000 population town.
Yeah.
That's an hour away from Oklahoma City. So, yeah.
Do you try to get the native vote by lying and saying that there's Indian in your family?
No, actually. Our governor has not been very good to the tribes over his last 4 years being in office. So tribal sovereignty is definitely something that I've been talking with people about. And that's definitely an issue. But no, I don't lie to people and say I'm a freedman or that I have some native in me or anything of that nature.
It's didn't work out for Elizabeth Warren all too much at the tail end there.
Nope.
But
Yeah.
with staying on kind of the indigenous issues, and I know that within Oklahoma, there's been some court cases that have kind of really swayed the jurisdiction on native lands. I was like, are there any of those issues affecting your district as far as who controls what, or is it just that there's a lot of population that are indigenous within the district?
So, to my knowledge, I am not aware of specific issues that have been happening within in terms of with law enforcement and the jurisdiction of certain things. Though there was a thing that happened some months ago where the city of Shawnee decided to, I want to say it was de-annex some land that one of the tribes had owned because there was a beef between the city of Shawnee and one of the tribes, and they decided to partner up and work together as opposed to beefing with each other. But that doesn't necessarily have to do with the dirt stuff. But I'm not aware of any particular issues of anything happening right now within my area, except for just simply, that people who are Native Americans who live here and the tribal leaders here, they're not really a fan of the governor and his unwillingness to just let the tribes have their sovereignty, and he wants to keep challenging it.
What is the party situation there in terms of the politics? Are we talking about purely race threats in America? Are you running as a Democrat? Do you have a third alternative party, Socialist Workers Parties? What are your political options in terms of your party affiliation as a candidate? Assuming, and I bet the fact that you're on this show, I would gather that your politics are rooted in kind of addressing working class issues, the issues of your constituents who are Native American, people of color, so on and so forth. So, what exactly is the logistics on the ground of the political parties in not only your district but Oklahoma overall?
So I'm running as a Democrat, and interesting enough, I believe I'm the first Black Democratic nominee for my district. So that's interesting. So we have three recognized parties here in Oklahoma: Republicans, of course, Democrats, and then the
We're having a little bit of a sorry, Greg. We're having a little bit of
Libertarians.
we're having a little
Yes.
bit of an audio issue with you where there's some static. Are you using an interface or just a microphone into a computer?
It's a microphone. What is it? Yeti.
There's some kind of static. You want to plug it in and plug it back in? It's a weird static. It's very it's like a
Yetis should be pretty fucking smooth, right?
you people pay all that money for that bullshit. That's all I got.
Well, they got different options. They got like a little egg option that's very affordable. You can find them at Yeti.com. Promo code This Is Revolution. No, you don't do
Someone
that.
said jiggle
Is
the
anything
cord.
better now?
That's better.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
talk again.
Is it better now?
Yes. Yes. Thanks, Greg.
All right.
I want you to
Okay.
sound crisp.
But-
It's going to go on audio too, man.
Yeah.
All
And if
right.
you jiggle the
sound
cord
well-
more than 3 times, you're just playing with it.
But yeah, the three political parties, Democrats, Libertarians, and Republicans, there isn't a Libertarian candidate, so it's me and the incumbent Republican. The thing with my district is, yes, it's technically a red district, but when we've had Democratic candidates who put in at least some work in order to be able to flip the district, they get close. So in 2016, the Democrat got 45% of the vote against who's now the incumbent. And the candidate in, 2018, he got 43%. And then the candidate in 2020, they didn't knock any doors or anything of that nature, and they ended up getting 30%. But the difference between the amount of votes that he got was still about 4,000 votes, and the candidate that were in 2018 got about 4,000 votes. So because it was a midterm, the turnout was lower versus, the 2020 presidential election. So there's a decent chunk of voters, about 4,000, that always vote Democrat whenever they come out, and I'm hoping to be able to make sure those people come out, make sure I get some new voters registered and younger voters out to the polls as well. So that's kind of where it's at. The district itself, I would say, isn't overtly super mega conservative. Even if they vote that way, it's actually a more moderate-ish district. In the past, we've elected more moderate type Republicans to represent us in the legislature. The only person that deviates from that is the current incumbent, who pretty much just supports anything that the Republicans want, and even the crazier sides of the Republican Party. So yeah.
Is the Trumpian manifestation of the Republican Party what holds sway in the district and the state, or are you guys more of the kind of old line? How big is the MAGA phenomenon?
So I would say Trump is still pretty popular, but I would say in my district, in terms of people who like Trump, it's more of, because they're Republicans, they'll vote for him, but they're not really huge fans of him, because in the 2016 primary, Oklahoma went for Ted Cruz. And so, whenever the general election came around, they just supported Trump just because he was a Republican. But I would say that, Trump's support, or the type of things that Trump's embodies, is definitely within the district, but I wouldn't say it's the overwhelming majority of people who vote in the district are not, Trumpian type Republicans.
Yeah, I was gonna ask like where I guess where do your politics I guess where are the policies that you're able to like kind of bridge those gaps? Because I think one instance we do you're looking at I think a very doable number. If you got a base of like 4,000 people, that if someone's showing out, you could count on their participation. There's probably like there's a level of campaign engagement that's going to have to get that 4,000 back. But then also probably like I don't know if even like dealing with the numbers of people who don't vote in the district. Is there just basic get out to vote type of stuff that you're looking into? But then also too, like if you describe some of the policy platforms that you're really actually trying to push to get some of the voters out.
So when it comes to the policies, I've mostly been talking about education, of course. I'm a substitute teacher. I'm also in school to become a history teacher, so education is super important to me, and it's also important to a lot of people within the district. I've been talking about, workers' rights and raising wages, and my whole thing about talking about inflation is we can't talk about inflation as if it's just happening because of whatever Republicans try to say that it's happening for. We have to talk about it in reference to large multinational corporations making record profits that they've been, or record profits compared to the last 50 years of their existence. So we have to be, as a government, we have to look at that and say, hey, you need to be paying your workers more, or you guys need to be paying more in taxes, or something of that nature. You can't just say that the inflation is just happening, we can't do anything about it, or the way to do something about it is to cut wages or cut benefits to people. So I've been talking a lot about that. Some other things is just simply talking to people about what's going on in the legislature. The current incumbent, he hasn't really done a whole lot of talking to voters and letting them know what's in the legislature. And he, is pretty standoffish about talking to voters whenever they ask him questions. In fact, I have a story about trying to talk to him about stuff. Is the static gone again?
Yes.
Or is it still there? Okay, it's gone? Okay. But I'm going to tell my funny story about my interaction with the incumbent, who's my opponent. So, back in 2018, this happened 4 years ago, as of June, I saw him at Starbucks, and I don't eat at Starbucks, by the way, I just used their Wi-Fi at the time, just to clarify. So I saw him at Starbucks, and I walked over to him and asked him, I said, hey, I was asking him a question about the medical marijuana ballot initiative that was going to be on the ballot that year. And I think I asked him what his thoughts were on it, like if he supported it or not, and if the legislature was going to do something in special session to like revoke it or minimize it. And so first he said to me, I don't like the way that you talk about me on Facebook, and if you could not, it makes it hard for me to be able to talk to you about things going on in the legislature. So if you could not do that, that'd be pretty cool, and it'd be good for our, relationship as constituent and voter or whatever.
When you
and
say
then I
you're
was like, yeah, go ahead.
When you say your Facebook now, I know you have your own show.
Yeah, this was before I even had the show, by the way.
Okay, so you were talking about your personal Facebook that he was reacting to after you just come up to him, in public.
Yes, and more specifically, my Facebook where he is not my friend on there, And all these posts where I did talk about him were only posts that friends could see. So I had someone on my page who was like sending him screenshots of my posts, and I eventually found out who that person was too. They're now in like a county chair, co-chair of the Potawatomi County Republican Party. But yeah, so he told me to stop talking about him on social media because he didn't like how I criticized him. And then he went on to not answer my question that I asked him. And so other people have had similar instances where they've talked to him and he kind of treated them that way or was even harsher to them. Like, even teachers during the walkout that year, they've had negative interactions with him. And people that I've talked to within the district, they say he's an asshole. So, yeah. Their words, not mine. Okay.
Are you going to be able to engage him in any kind of public debates?
There will be a forum in October that PAVE is this group that puts on these forums for candidates in our area. So there will be. I would be willing to have more debates and forums with him if possible, but I don't know if that's something he would be interested in because he's not really a huge fan of talking to people about the issues and stuff like that.
And I guess too, it's like, is there any moniker or like any way that you can tell like what your success is doing? Like, and like it's always tough with these like smaller races, and especially too, it's like you're in Oklahoma, like a county seat or a local seat in California or like LA, New York gets a whole lot of attention. Is there any way that you can kind of get a judge of what your chances are of how you're doing and anything like that? Like any type of like polling data that comes out that'll help out?
No. Because it's a state house seat, generally people don't really do polls for stuff like that.
There's no
it's a seat with
apparatus that does anything.
What about the state party?
No.
Yeah, nothing.
No. And honestly, it would kind of probably be a waste of time to commission a poll for a seat where it's like 40,000 people, and the responses that you would get would probably not be as representative of what would be the outcome in November anyway.
And I guess too, it's like so you're running as a Democrat, like
yep.
Obviously,
you're not a Democrat.
I mean, I wouldn't say that I Joe Biden's not anybody who I would say I'm ideologically aligned with, if that's what you mean. Yes.
How do you feel about you have a show in a bit of a leftist space. There's a lot of attacking of Democrats. We definitely do our fair share of attacking Democrats. Do you try to defend Democrats, or do you just try to set yourself apart from other people and say this is about me, not about party?
So, yeah, mostly the second thing. I try to make it about me and not so much about, defending other Democrats, because frankly, if you're going to come up to me and start talking to me about something Joe Biden did, I'll probably also agree with that person that, I don't like that thing Joe Biden did, or I don't like how he's doing this. And I've had those kinds of conversations with Republicans, and, sometimes they'll say something that, Biden actually did that was good, that I actually agreed with, but, a lot of the time it's, oh, well, I don't like how he's not doing anything about the gas prices. So it's like, oh, well, I have a policy for you on that one. How do you feel about nationalizing the entire energy sector so we just control the prices at the state level or at the federal level? It's a lot of the times it's you having to separate yourself from those figures within the party. For me, it's not hard. I don't like Joe Biden. I mean, sure, I voted for him over Trump, but at the same time, it's like I don't have to defend everything Biden says or does. Same thing with Nancy Pelosi or anybody like that.
Okay. But yeah, all the usual suspects off the lips, boy.
Yeah.
But the big question is, being in Oklahoma, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can you run a successful campaign when you are so anti Metallica?
Oh, well, so the thing
Metallica has a
is
very
this.
strong foothold in Oklahoma as a state, as I have played from your popular, more liberal cities. I've
Mhm.
played Sound Pony several times, and I've also played in your more conservative, anti-Negro cities like Lawton. But
most
hey,
people don't know the
Lawton. I
second.
love how Lawton was the first one you went to. I was thinking, I'm like, wait, is he about to say like some small town in southeastern Oklahoma? And he's like,
no,
Lawton.
but all jokes aside, how can you run a serious campaign if you can't ride the lightning?
Well, first of all,
What does that
well,
mean?
I don't have to be concerned with riding the lightning because I believe I need fuel instead of lightning. As well as, no, that's a joke. I don't think
You're trying to use
fuel's better
Metallica
than
songs as puns?
yes.
You know why?
Yes.
Because Limp Bizkit songs would get you canceled.
That's not true. Hey,
It's
people like Limp Bizkit out here, okay?
You don't go up
It's
to
not like
anybody and talk about hot dog flavored water.
Oh
And
man, you know what I
cookies.
didn't even think
no.
And
about?
sticky.
This is what happens when you grow up with no soul train in your house.
Gosh.
What are you talking about, Greg? Do the
Tiger
watch
King
Pascal.
was Tiger King was Oklahoma, wasn't it?
Yes, yes, it was. I lived Tiger King. I didn't need to watch it on Netflix.
What do you mean? Is that your real dad?
No, what? No, Jesus Christ, no, no. But I have met him, and I have a picture with Joe Exotic.
Greg, if
Oh,
you want to win, fuck the
Yeah.
suit. You just fucking walk out there to picture. This is me and Joe Exotic. I'm for the people.
Yeah,
Gregory
exactly.
Hardin, say no more.
I'm very, very interested in how your connection to Joe Exotic can help you win. You know, it's just
It's not a real connection. I mean, he came to my college, UCO, whenever he was running for governor to do a debate with the other two libertarians who were running for governor.
Was
That's
it the
amazing.
funniest
Yeah.
thing you've ever seen?
Seeing him talk was, yes.
that is amazing.
Oh wow, that was, but yeah, that me getting a picture with Joe Exotic when I was like 19 years old was an interesting thing. Now I think I posted it on
That should be
Facebook.
your
or on
that would
Twitter
be
a
my
bunch.
campaign poster.
No,
Remember when Joe
can't be
Exotic was
doing
running
that.
for, was it president or governor? He was like, I'm
He's
broke
done
as
both.
shit.
Yes, it was president when he did that ad. Yeah.
Gregory, I wanted to ask this kind of more logistical question. Like,
Yes.
are your family like long-term Oklahomans? Like, how did Negroes get to Oklahoma? I know there've been black folk in Oklahoma, Tulsa. I know the history there, but in more recent contemporary history, have you how did you guys get there? Have you been there for a long time? Are you a long-term Oklahoma, Oklahoma family? I'd love to hear some of that history.
So, in terms of my own history, I don't really like, I think let's see. I know my parents grew up in Oklahoma. I believe their parents also did. All of them were born in Oklahoma. Yeah. I don't really know a whole lot before then. So, but to my knowledge, I think if you go back a little bit further, you start seeing people who came from other states. It's kind of weird talking about the older, like my grandparents and where they were born and all that stuff, because it's like, first of all, my mom's side of the family. Her parents, if they were still alive, they would be like over 100 years old now.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and they had. Oh, so this is fun. So my grandparents on my mom's side, they had 15 kids. Like both of them, they had 15 kids, and then So I have like 1 million cousins on that side of the family.
It's
And
impressive.
yeah, my mom is the second youngest of the 15.
Oh
And
shit.
and then she had me when she was like 36. So yeah, it's interesting. But when it comes to, you also talked about how black people have been in Oklahoma. There's the 13 original black towns. I live 30 minutes away from one of them. One of them's called Brooksville. It's like a little bit out of my district actually. And then there's there's an interesting black history about Oklahoma that I've been learning a lot more about recently, that a lot of people don't know about and that we didn't learn about in school either. Like, I think the only reason I learned anything about the Tulsa Race Massacre wasn't necessarily because they told us that we were supposed to learn it, but it's just because I had a cool teacher who told us about it. So, yeah.
I mean, what have you been learning about the history of Black Americans in Tulsa that you found kind of illuminating?
In Tulsa specifically?
I'm sorry, not Tulsa.
Or just in Oklahoma?
In general. Sorry, Oklahoma in general.
So, let's see. Well, learning about, specifically when it comes to Shawnee, because I feel like that's the more recent things that I've been learning over the last year or so, that a lot of people, when they think of my area where I'm from, they think it's mostly white people. It may be a few Native Americans, but in reality, it's like, no, this is a pretty diverse area of the state. A lot of Native Americans, a handful of black people, even though, because whenever I start looking back to the 50s, when Brown versus Board of Education decision was made and the schools had to desegregate, there was a black school in Shawnee that had to close, and whenever Shawnee had to integrate. And when I was learning about this, I was like, really? So the first graduating high school class of my high school, Shawnee High School, was in 1958? And there was a black high school, and there's still a black part of town called Dunbar Heights, and these were things that I didn't know much about until I started running for office and just started reading into them and asking people about them. And it's definitely something. Like, I tell students about it now, they're like, what? There was enough black people here that we had to have our own schools? Like, I mean, yeah, like,
even one black
news to me
person.
too. I know, right?
Even one is enough to have your own.
Yeah, because it wasn't like a huge black school, but like, it had people. They didn't have to be, drive out to Wowoka or somewhere else where there was a large number of black people. They had a whole school here. But yeah, that to me has been pretty interesting to find out recently since I've been running.
That's what's
And
up.
another, actually a serious question. Running, you're a person of color. Are you getting hit with questions about critical race theory?
Occasionally, but usually.
And then how do you deflect those questions?
So, I mean, mostly it's, do you support teaching it to kids or something of that nature? It's like, I mean, well, first of all, it's not being taught, and, I feel like it's not so much that we need to be teaching critical race theory, it's we need to be teaching more about the actual history of our state when it comes to, everything, frankly, because we have an Oklahoma history class, but the kids, and even myself, whenever I was in school, we didn't really learn a whole lot about the history of the state of Oklahoma itself. And if you just look into that, like, there's a lot of racial history within that people can learn about and should be learn about when it comes to the tribes, when it comes to black people, when it comes to white people, when it comes to the Dust Bowl and all that stuff that we didn't really learn about. Like, it's like pretty wild to me that some of the stuff we learn about, but people are worried about whether or not critical race theory is being taught. And I'm like, it's not, but, we do need to be learning about some of these things that actually happened in our state, specifically, not just in the country, that do have to do with racism and stuff like that.
How is the state handling, though, as a Oklahoma native? And I would say over the last year or so, there's been a lot of attention around the Tulsa I hate saying Black Wall Street bombing. How has the state been handling that? It seems like they've been embracing it a little bit more. And this is a state that is extremely red.
Yeah.
And that's almost a double entendre. but like, seriously, how are they handling it? Because I'm wondering how that would work against you in a campaign, as we're seeing it constantly thrown out by the right, that there is this love of critical race theory. It is the new boogeyman in the culture war, and I feel like they're doing more with this idea of critical race theory being this major problem than anything else, maybe next to abortion.
Yeah, so I haven't really heard a lot of people, whether it be just like in my district or in general, push back on talking about or teaching specifically about the Tulsa Race Massacre. I think a lot of people, even if they're, inclined to usually not want to talk about, Black history or racism, they're still kind of surprised that they never heard about it or learned about it. And so they don't really have much of an opinion one way or the other about, people talking about teaching it or doing some sort of, memorials for it or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that, Pascal? The whole CRT thing constantly being thrown out.
I mean, I think that I don't like the way that they conflate CRT with teaching facts about American history. I mean, I think that CRT is a different ideological, intellectual phenomenon that it comes out of higher education, universities, that is different than having a critical understanding of history that is racially diverse. And I'm an advocate. I believe that we should be talking about the inconvenient truths about American history in school, but I don't think that critical race theory is necessarily the same thing. I think critical race theory is a particular narrative of history that exists, that comes out of critical studies, that's different than simply teaching the rather true but sometimes dark aspects of American history. And I think that can be done, and I don't see why we should stop doing it.
And then, moving away from critical race theory, but another, ethnicity issue is the Supreme Court opinion on, what was the natives? It's not native sovereignty. Yeah, the state being able to prosecute non-natives on native land. Is that an issue in your area? Because you said there's like a 20% native population.
So I do think that it is an issue in my area because of the tribal jurisdiction of the different tribes. Mm-hmm. I haven't read of much.
It's long
in particular. Oh yeah. Oh well. No, I haven't read the decision, but in terms of within the district itself, I haven't heard of any instances yet where this has been a conflict. But it is definitely something that I get asked about or end up talking about because of the native population here.
Mm. So you're giving me the politician answer, that is, you have no answer?
Well, I mean, it's just what it is. It's not really a politician answer, it's just an answer.
I mean, I don't know if you want to even get into it because of the race, but I will ask Pascal, have you read anything about that?
No, I'm not really familiar with the details of this Native American jurisprudence that's just
Well,
come out of
so
the
so you know that Native Americans have sovereignty in their land. They have tribal
right
police and tribal courts. If you go over there and commit a crime, you can get prosecuted
in
by
the
the
tribal
United
court.
States government and not the native the
Okay.
native government. And we can be less harsh, right, depending on who you are, than the native government. And sometimes the native government may even know that we're going to be more harsh and have no problem handing you over, especially if you're not an important person. So
hmm
it's definitely bringing up a lot of conversation in the native community, and sadly, I think a lot of people leave issues of indigenous people up to it. It doesn't really get talked about too much unless it's an environmental issue.
Right.
'Cause
Because
I think unless you live in a place like where Greg lives, or Pine Ridge, or even somewhere in North Dakota, unless you're actually around the very small amount of indigenous people that are left, um, no one tends to really interrogate the situations on reservations and just in native land in general.
I think you're right about that. It's not something that I usually look into when I see Supreme Court decisions, only because they're not communities that I have interfaced with greatly in large parts of my life. I mean, growing up in New York, living in Boston and Miami,
Yeah.
you don't see that, and it's sad. I'm not proud of that, as a matter of fact, because I think that it really blinds a lot of Americans to a very important element of our society in terms of how Native people are treated, not only by the law now, but how they've been treated historically.
There he is.
Yo,
You're back.
I'm back.
It's one of those things that, again, no one likes to talk about because I think people have they're I don't care. I think for the most part, in a lot of eyes of Americans, especially coastal Americans, and if you think about mainstream media comes out of the coasts, like you said, Pascal, California and New York and DC is where most of your media is coming from. No one really talks about native issues. They're not a very big voting bloc, first of all, and for the most part, they're invisible, right?
hmm
Because they live in what we call flyover states in the middle of the country. So if you just assume that everyone has a casino and you watch Thunderheart with Val Kilmer in the 90s, you understand, or, Dances with Wolves, then you understand the experience. And the real
Right.
life experience is very, very, very different. And their relationship with the United States has been very complex. And we don't really like, talking about history, we definitely don't really embrace the history of Native enslavement. We don't embrace the history of broken treaties. Like, people can say the U.S. has broke every treaty, but do you even know what those treaties were? Right? That have been broken. And even this situation, as I was having a
It's like a lot.
conversation with my lady friend that's here who worked in immigration law for years. I wanted to talk about it actually Thursday, and she was like, don't, because it's actually a really, really complex thing. And even if you try to give a lot of nuance, it's too much, and no one's really going to understand because the waters are so muddied when it comes to the idea of tribal sovereignty and actually what really goes on, because there is a hierarchy within tribes as well. So.
No, and I think I mean, just go into the larger structure of what is it, the Bureau of Indian Affairs within the United States government.
Deb Haaland.
How literally how the official network of tribes is set up, how it's allocated and all that shit. How they, literally make them go through a process, like blood quantum used to be an official part of that process. It's more of kind of the things it's like, oh, it's still on the books, but no one goes by it anymore in a lot of cases. But yeah, it sets up a system in which case, like tribes are, battling against each other for the same resources. In some cases, trying to discredit or not recognize certain tribes to keep hold of the resources they have. But I don't know. I mean, like these are, like not to like broad brushstroke it, but it's like, like you said, it's like if you draw those lines from all those broken treaties, because like some of those treaties are like redos of broken treaties. It's like, oh, sorry, we fucked that one up, but instead this time around, right? So it's like, it's like this recycling of the lie of whatever the hell the trick that they're trying to just like whatever, just get their foothold, take But as it comes to right now, and this is where like I think Oklahoma is fascinating as far as land back as it like looks on the fucking ground, which is not necessarily something where it's like tribal sovereignty is given and then everything is perfect in in these scenarios. And because like you said too, it's like there can be no tribal sovereignty without an actual like society outside of those tribal that actually integrates together. Like there's still going to be trade and commerce and all of these things. I don't think that I'm sure there's a whole lot of people that want to be left alone. Like shit, I saw the Elon Musk Pope picture and I about just went off in the woods somewhere. But most people want they want self-determination, not to be secluded. And having that understanding, and also like understanding in what has gone on native lands to indigenous
and
people.
Poverty in a lot of those places is on poverty on a lot of those places is on another level. Violence in a lot of those places is on another level, and we're not going to get into the hows and the whys. That's a whole other show. But when you start talking about like incarceration rates,
alcoholism, drug use,
that's why I don't understand the idea that like blackness is eternal and you're always gonna be the bottom of some sort of racial totem pole. I always say, have you ever been to a reservation?
The quality of life statistics for Native Americans in those areas are horrendous.
Pine Ridge has the lowest life expectancy in the Western Hemisphere, and I believe the only place lower is your home, Haiti, Pascal.
And I don't know, especially with that too. It's like policing, and like that had to do with the recent case, was with policing, and that's the like there's this is just it's what happens when with poverty. But I guess too, asking Greg of like how does the policing conversation look in your district, and then I guess it's also too like within light of like some tribal nations not having the ability to police themselves. And kind of like the state being forced upon that. But like, what's your take on policing in your community? In which case, within the state legislature, you get like a little bit, but it's mostly on like localities and stuff like that. But you might, you'll get some state control over state policing apparatus. But yeah, what's your take?
Yeah, so policing within my district, there is a tribal. I want to say a few of the tribes, they do have their own police force, and they cooperate with the county and within, the other city jurisdictions of policing as well. Occasionally, whenever there's a sheriff election, that's one of the questions is how well the sheriff is going to communicate or have a good relationship with the tribes. Let's see. And yeah, when it comes to the legislature and policing, I remember a few years ago they passed some bill that would have made it illegal. Yeah, it did. Yeah, it made it illegal for you to be able to record a police officer.
On native land or just anywhere?
Just period. Yeah, just anywhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it passed.
Yes.
So you're from a small town, and police violence really differs the size of the city, right?
Oh yeah.
I'm from a major metropolitan area. For the most part, police don't want to really deal with homeless people, right? You go down the road a ways in some of the more nicer enclaves of California, like the Central Coast, places like Santa Barbara, they have no problem lumping up homeless people because there's really nobody to beat up because you're around rich people all the time. So what is the situation like with you? You talk about there's a state law that came down that said no recording of law enforcement. I know you have a couple really big cities. There's Oklahoma City, Tulsa. It's maybe Stillwater when school's in session, but
School's in session.
but like all jokes aside, what is police violence or police presence like where you live in your district?
So, because I live in myself, I'm on the outskirts of the district, like in the very rural area. So, personally, where I live, I don't really see police officers or the sheriff at all, hardly. But within Shawnee itself, there's, a presence. I see them driving around quite a bit. Probably noticed them a lot more driving around post 2014. That's something that I noticed. The Shawnee Police Department, I think, or was it the Sheriff's Department? They don't necessarily have like a horrible reputation, in terms of like brutality or mishaps and stuff like that. We do have a huge homeless problem here in Shawnee.
Really?
And oh yeah, like really bad. There's like a Think Progress article from like 2013 you could read about it, and it's like only gotten slightly better within the last few years because the city has actually started to take some initiative in trying to handle it better. But I would say, in terms of policing in Oklahoma,
Oh,
where I
your
live,
sound went out, Greg.
Oh, is it better now?
Yeah, you're
Is it
back.
Okay. Yeah, and I think the worst is probably Oklahoma City, because there's a lot of statistics about how Oklahoma City is actually like probably the most like violent police department in the entire state, or not state, in the entire like country almost.
Was Oklahoma City where that cop was, where he was sexually assaulting all those
yes.
women of color? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was here. It was a few years ago whenever I was hearing about that for the first time. Like,
that was one of the few sentences I've ever watched on since like the 80s when court TV was the thing. Do you remember that, Pascal and Marcus?
Yeah.
Was that case?
Do you remember it, Marcus?
Yeah. Court TV. Yeah, that shit.
No.
Like,
do you remember that case that I'm talking about?
Oh, the one. No, not specifically. No, but I think it tells.
There was
tells us something that you're like.
Was he a
sheriff?
Was he a sheriff or just a cop, Greg?
He was just a cop. I think he was just a cop.
He
wasn't a sheriff. Just a cop.
I know he was getting women like at the dark part of a highway or the street or something, and they were generally women of color. And if they wanted out of this ticket,
they
were going to have to. Daniel Holtzclaw. Thank you, Derek Fuller. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that case. I remember that name. Yes.
Yeah, that was. It was a oh God. I think I was like changing channels or something, and I was just like, what the hell? Yeah, that was an insane case that I don't think got enough publicity because to his sentencing, he was like, no, this wasn't like that. I don't know why you guys are saying this about me.
And another thing that I was going to add earlier about what y'all were saying about how Native Americans, they have worse outcomes when it comes to
quality of life.
So, and how that also relates to black people. How white people, they don't say it as much now, but they'll say stuff like, the state, the government's always trying to help black people, blah, 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 that kind of a thing. Live off of the government. White people say that about Native Americans here, but about the tribes. and they say like, oh well, they'll just live these Native Americans. The reason why they drop out of high school is because they think they could just live off the tribe, and they do, and blah blah blah. And it's like don't get me wrong, it's horrible and racist when they say that about black people. But when they say it about Native Americans, it feels like it's a even more evil thing for them to say, because it's like, do you not know what white people did to Native Americans and are still doing? Why would, even if it were true that the tribes took care of them, why is that a bad thing?
It's absolutely insane. Yeah.
Well,
right?
I don't. The hate, Marcus. Seriously, we always talk about. I don't know too many black people that have walked into a room and had somebody call them a nigger. I don't know too many black people that. I mean, straight up, you can't be here, because generally you're not going to be anywhere where you shouldn't be, right? Give me 1 second. Sorry.
Uh-oh. There's someone calling him to call him the N-word right now.
Jumped in. Wow, call me a nigga. What?
What? You can't be here.
Yeah.
Listen, man. I think that racism definitely exists and it's a reality. But the thing is, though, I'm not a big fan of the whole oppression Olympics. You know what I'm saying? My tribe's pain is worse than your pain. But the larger point is that there is a historical way in which these communities have been really stripped of resources, whether it be black or Native American. That definitely requires for us to understand how capitalism otherizes them precipitously badly in a profound way. And I know in Oklahoma, because you have such large Native American population, that's something that you're going to have to be dealing with on the regular law.
Yeah, and I think something that obviously we talk about quite often, but the thing, and I'm sure I'm going to project onto you, Greg, that you agree, is that it is self-determination, really. These communities need to be given the power to fix themselves. There's no, none of us are going to be no one is going to be able to, I'm just going to do these things, these sweeping moves. No, we need to give resources and power to communities to empower themselves. And that's just what the elite class, the ruling class, the politicians that are in power right now, they're not really invested in doing, because their investments come from somewhere else. So
yeah, I do agree. I will co-sign on that. But that's why whenever I hear white people, and even sometimes black people, say this about Native Americans living off the tribe and whatnot, the tribe is their government. It is them. That is their self-determination. If the tribes decided that they were going to give their members all healthcare and housing and whatnot, why would that be a bad thing? Why is that something to look down on them for? You should be demanding the same for the Oklahoma state government or the United States government.
I think it's because of the look, let's be honest, the look of the res is a rough look, right? And what I was trying to say, my son tried to call me.
Figured that.
My son's not a fan of the show. He's not a patron, so he doesn't know when Daddy's on there. But anyway, I was going to say was I never really saw that level of racism before, not in a movie, until I went to work and live in North Dakota for a while. People are very, very upfront and feel nothing to say shit that will get you fucked up in the street about Native American people. Feel nothing. They don't care if they're in the room. That shit is on a whole nother level. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with the fact that you see, much like we always talk about the unhoused and major metropolitan areas here in bigger cities, right? You see that blight when you go by a res And when you see that, you're like, well, these people, that's the first instinct. It's just like the culture of poverty bullshit that we always talk about on this show from the Moynihan report and failing cities.
Underclass ideology.
Yes, St. Louis and the projects in New York, that were crumbling in the 60s and 70s. The only problem is those people that can't get right. No one takes into account.
Right.
Again, over 100 years of constantly broken treaties. So
a whole ass genocide will do something to a population of people.
You said how many? Yeah, it might affect a population.
Just it has some effects. But yeah, I don't know.
I have a question. So just to circle back to your opponent in this election, I heard one of your speeches and you said that your opponent called you a name. Would you like to tell us about that so we have an idea of what your opponent is like?
Oh no, that was not my opponent. That
Okay.
was
That
the
was my mom.
chair. No, that was the chair of the Potawatomi County Republicans. They the week after filing, or the week of filing, was like that Saturday. They made a Facebook post saying that the only person that filed against Del Curbs for House District 26 was some socialist communist who substitute teaches in the area, so he has access to your children.
Wow.
That's what they said.
Were they trying to call you
So,
a groomer, or were they calling you like someone that's going to teach the kids about, the Comintern?
They called him a pedo.
They call him a pedophile?
Yeah.
well, that's what that means when they say that.
Right.
He
He's
has
got
access to your
kids.
children in school, So most people looked at that and thought of it as them calling me a pedophile. And that guy, actually, he is running for a seat for the Shawnee City Commission, which is like the city council in Shawnee. And he made it to the runoff against my friend Lauren. So, I'll be supporting her and hoping that she's able to beat him in August, because we can't have people in elected government who are willing to call me pedophiles and then not recognize me in public whenever I introduce myself to them. That was probably the more weirder thing about it, is that when I went up to him with my campaign t-shirt on, he had no idea who I was, and I was like, this is a problem. This guy can't operate in society like this if he's gonna act like he could just call people pedophiles and just not recognize them whenever he sees them. Because I thought I was gonna genuinely scare that dude. Because from what I've heard of him, he's a huge pussy and is just he'll throw.
Greg, I don't think pussy is the.
It's a technical term.
It's words that people will understand. Okay, I probably shouldn't have said that anyway. But still,
if you were a Metallica fan, you wouldn't
true.
have said
It's
but still. But either way, my opponent Del Curbs, he didn't say anything to denounce that, so he might as well agree with that statement, from what I hear. So,
with this whole attack, and this is where you got some like culture war, right? The push against LGBTQ community and this groomer type thing, right? It's like anything gay, that's grooming. Trans person exists, that's a groomer. They throwing it all around. Obviously, this person saying, "Oh, he's got access to your kids," tying in line with that. I think that kind of overlaps with the critical race theory attack. This idea of protecting the children. But then how did obviously in real life just educational resources, after school care, school child care, general health care for pregnant mothers or people people expecting, any of that shit, healthcare in general. But coming to, like, this is where, like, with abortion and a lot of where these more extreme right states, they're like literally saying, like, no, like 10, 11 years old doesn't fucking matter, like the pregnancy goes on. I mean, I guess, like, yeah, like, what they are saying, like, Oklahoma's kind of like one of, like, as far as like statewide, it's like looking pretty bad as far as like, abortion access being like completely taken
Yeah.
away.
Is that going to be a bit of a impediment to your run if you're a pro? I almost said pro-choice. If you're a pro-choice candidate? Is that going to be a?
So, in terms of an impediment, yeah. But with what's going on now, I was already planning on how I'm going to answer this question when asked, because it always gets asked, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice. And,
Okay, so let's pretend we're going to pretend that we are we're running against you. Let's get you ready, and I'm your opponent. I'm going to be your opponent, and we're gonna play debate now. This is gonna have a faux mock debate. So they ask the abortion question, and I'm your far right opponent, and I say, this man, if you want to call him that, is a critical race theorist, socialist, Zionist. He wants to kill babies at 10 years old. I think that life begins at erection. And
technical term.
If we don't stop people like this Hardin, he's going to have abortions everywhere willy-nilly, and teaching your children about history.
With sickles and hammers.
History.
Communist, Zionist. I think he's actually Jewish and possibly a homosexual.
Okay.
I see the floor.
And Greg, your response.
Okay. Well, my opponent over here has voted for several bills since he's been in the legislature that would promote the idea of women and children. If they are raped, we will now have a situation where their rapist is probably not going to be able to deal with the consequences of that rape, but the person who was raped will have to deal with those consequences, regardless of what happens to their rapist. And I don't think many people within the district support that. I think most people are okay with, if you are raped, you should be able to get an abortion if you are 10, 11 years old, or 20 years old, or 30 years old. And that's a little bit of an extreme take from my opponent over here, who owns the hot dog stand, or hot dog store, or whatever in the district.
Hot dogs that contentious, man? What kind of flavor do you got these?
He owns a Coney Island.
I think you need to understand
Shawnee
here that it doesn't
But
matter
that's pretty
the
much-
situation or the age. What was that child wearing?
Yeah, as far as like,
I feel like that would actually be a response.
I'm trying to get you ready. I'm trying to get
But
you
that's
ready.
But no, but like that's pretty much what my answer on that is going to be. It's like, yes, I'm pro-choice. I recognize most people in my district are not pro-choice, but at the same time, I also know most people in my district are not okay with the idea that a woman getting raped will not be able to get an abortion if she's pregnant from that rape. Yet her rapist is probably going to go off free from any consequence from that. And, because whenever I was growing up, that was the thing. If you were pro-life, it was the exceptions, right? Which, as we all know, also, the exceptions kind of don't really matter that much if you can't get an abortion at all. And even if those are written into law, the idea that you would have to have proof that you were raped via the court system and whatnot, when we know most people who are sexually assaulted don't come forward immediately and whatnot. Like, it's kind of a moot point to even say that we should be writing these exceptions into law. We should just have abortions being able to be done in the state, in the country. So therefore, if these things do happen, whether it's the life of the mother, that's the other exception too, which is also kind of a, how do we know when that's the case, or type thing. So it's like, why write it into law and make it this ambiguous thing that people can't really pick apart necessarily? So that's kind of what my take is on that, because I know most people are not, which I have had some people say to me stuff like, oh, well, the baby didn't do anything wrong. And it's like, okay, but like, come on now, you're really like,
Just
think a
when people
10-year-old
say that,
should be able to
when
say,
people
well,
say
go ahead.
that, just respond back. Look, there was a 10-year story arc on Law and Order SVU over the fact that Olivia Benson is a child of rape and her dealing with that. There you go. And just walk away with your mic drop moment.
But yeah, like, that's kind of where I'm headed with that. I don't know if that's really going to move the needle in terms of voters or votes, but that I have no problem taking that stance. A lot of the other Democrats who have ran in the past have taken the approach of saying that they're pro-life, but they don't want to outlaw abortion or limit abortion. And for me, I'm just like, I don't want to give that answer. I'm pro-choice. I've always been pro-choice. That's my stance. And my opponent wants your daughter to get raped and carry that baby to term. Like,
Oh, Jesus.
That's the stance.
That's in all fairness, that's a pretty good response. Because
That's
I mean, it's the truth.
That's good. That's the way they're
It's
going to
the
talk to you,
truth.
though. No, I really like the way you said that, because after being in that lion's den with that thing in New York, that is definitely the way they talk. So for you to say something like, yeah, your opponent wants your child to get raped, that's what they want, I think that would really kind of F up the narrative, because I don't think they have anyone that comes at him like that, because people are always on the back foot, right?
Yeah.
You're
The
always
only response to actual aggressive left politics is, well, so much for the tolerant left, or they just start, getting out the guns. Like, there's really no rhetorical, I guess, response to you just giving facts and then tying it to the things that these people have said. And I don't like. I don't know if it was. I don't think it was Oklahoma. It was.
Watch Greg start running a whole campaign. My opponent is for child rape.
I see. I've even said to people, like, I probably will say, that phrase like the way that I just said it now.
Mhm.
I probably won't say it that harshly like I did, but it's the truth. Like, he voted for, I believe, 2 bills that did not leave that exception in there, which they used to have bills that would have that exception in there. So you have to believe that the intent of these legislators, when they don't put that in, those exceptions in there, is that they do want people to get raped and be forced to carry these fetuses, pregnancies to term. They want this, because otherwise, if they didn't, or wanted to have the appearance that they didn't, they would have wrote it in there. So they have to be able to defend that position to voters who claim to be who say that they're pro-life, but don't want people who are children or people who get raped at all to have to be forced to carry a pregnancy to term.
Well
I think
said.
something too that like kind of is like not put out to the forefront, but it's like we're charging there, like in this like fucking theocracy that we have is like the fact that it's like some conservatives don't think like women can be raped. That's where like Jason alluded to it of like, oh, what was she wearing, and all these things. And there's like literally these like this type of like just they'll melt the brides, and like essentially women aren't humans. They're the property of man. Like all these things where it's like, no,
Was
like
it
no matter
Oklahoma?
what.
Marcus, was it Oklahoma or Utah where the state representative said that women have the power to control the amount of semen?
Jeez.
Oh my God.
Yes. Yeah.
comes to-
Yeah. Yeah. Like yes.
None of my exes, by the way, had that power. That's why I have so
We
much.
know that.
Yes, we do. Father of 27.
They did not have that level of, as Greg would say, pussy control.
Yes.
Y'all
Technical term.
There's a
Yeah.
technical
That.
term, pussy
Yeah.
control.
hmm
But no,
sorry.
I think that's like one of the things though is that like as you're saying, it's like no, they want women to be raped, carry pregnancy to terms because they don't believe women are human beings. Like these are like in like fucking who is it, Madison Cawthorn, say earthen vessels. It's like what is it, like a fucking Voss sent to you by Jesus? You know what I'm saying? Like you just put the water in, a little bit of seed, and then you get a baby. You know, like no, they're real human beings. Because really, it's like when you get down to it, like abortion, access to abortion, contraceptives, all these things, basic healthcare. This is just basic healthcare. It really is not special. But it's just, yeah, a lot of autocratic
Can you imagine like
theocracy coming
young
in.
kids for the first time try to do it, and some goofy dudes like, can't you have that fucking like pussy shit where you?
That's the thing. Like, yeah, like
That
no
happens.
shit. No shit, man. No, people
His
don't
girlfriend,
know.
like a mechanic
They
under that thing.
don't.
I'm
Yes.
looking in.
That's
look
Jason,
like
though.
the is out.
Jason, I know you're fucking around, but it's a legit problem.
Absolutely.
Like literally, when people do not know how the human body works, this happens. This shit happens.
Absolutely true.
Like,
Excuse me. There was another lawmaker who said that women who wear tight jeans cannot be raped because it's
Oh my
impossible
gosh.
for a man to get the pants off. She has to want to get the pants off. People
I have
don't know
tried
how-
numerous times when I see a woman walk by with tight jeans and round buttocks to get in the pants. Never have I been able to get in those pants. Sometimes I pay for it, but they make me wear a condom.
You need pliers, by the way.
you need flyers.
That's how
I
some
can't be
people
seen
get
laughing
into.
at these jokes. I'm running for office, you guys.
That's how
Jeez.
There's no one in Oklahoma's watching this.
I'm sitting here trying to maintain composure. I'm like, y'all are really doing a great job for my boy Gregory here.
Greg's gonna be great. Okay, pivot. Greg, tell us about maybe not the best pivot, but tell us about Gregory Hardin the first. And
My dad, you mean?
yes, the role this person played in you deciding to run for office.
Yeah, so he's been, he's a hardworking man. He worked for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week most of the time whenever I was growing up.
In oil field?
No, he worked it was a factory type job
Okay.
in the north part of town. And, he has never not, he has never, I'm reading the comment at the bottom, sorry. He, whenever I was growing up, he always let me know that, things cost money, how much certain things cost, and, how people have to work and how hard he works, and that also played a role in my politics when it came to, unions. He's not a union worker, but, the wages that he had were higher for the time in terms of, like, compared to the minimum wage, and, certain benefits that he had were pretty good whenever we were growing up. But that type of thing has influenced my politics, and, why I'm running is because I don't want people to have to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week just to be able to provide for their families. They should be able to do 40 hours. And if they do want to work overtime, they should be getting paid time and a half for that, which my dad did. But a lot of places, they don't want to pay time and a half. So we have to go after those places. There's places that don't want to give you
state though, right? You're in a bit of a union.
Yep, right to work. Right to work was passed, I want to say in the year 2000 here. And it was passed by ballot initiative, actually. It wasn't even passed with the legislature. The legislature put it on the ballot, but the voters voted it in. I think technically the way that we would repeal it has to be through ballot initiative, which that's something I would like to see happen, because I think that now, if you were to put something like right to work or a repeal of right to work on the ballot, the people of Oklahoma would probably vote for the repeal, because now they kind of understand that unions are important and are necessary. So, um, but yeah, but that's kind of the role that my dad played in terms of me running, and he's been very supportive of me running. And yeah.
Well, Greg, you sound like a nice, upstanding, young leftist, red-blooded American male. That, we can deal with the communist, socialist kind of other problems and whatnot in terms of the politics. But I think that, I look forward to hopefully you winning out in the end in this, contentious battle you're doing for this seat. And I'm really happy that you were inspired to try to bring some left politics to Oklahoma in this area, this region, because I think it's good, man. It's good to see that people who have that kind of politics try to put, their foot to the fire and actually try to take it to the masses. And that's pretty brave of you to do that in such a place that's known to be such a red state.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
would
like I
also
guess.
say bring left politics back to Oklahoma, because we do have a
Mm.
decent history of left politics within Oklahoma. And I'm not just talking about Eugene Debs winning the highest percentage in the 1936 election or whatever it is, the stat that people throw around. But whenever whenever the state of Oklahoma was created, when it was the people who helped write the Constitution were populists and people who were on the left. And, of course there was the racists too, but still, a lot of the reason why we have certain things that we have, like the ballot initiative petition, and we have several different elected statewide offices for things that in other states the governors just appoint those people, is because of, the populist and left wing, elements that were part of the state's history back whenever it first started.
Can I ask more of a question to like follow through? You know, win or lose, you know, you are a part of a larger thing, and even like like obviously even you're saying like you are injecting yourself into a left history that's been within Oklahoma, obviously with the United States. Um, yeah, going forward, how I guess how does the actual like the movement being built out and stuff like that, like where do you see things going forward after this race and you know going forward? Any groups that you're partnering with that actually create long-standing coalitions that go outside of the election process and everything like that? Just the future plans.
Well, for me personally, I've already decided that if I lose in November, I'm going to run again, because I think that this seat has had has had a handful of different Democratic candidates come close to winning, and then they didn't run again in order to try to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like some of these candidates, they could have won if they had ran again, because they came close before, and I believe I can come close and possibly win this time. And I think that if I run again in 2024, even though it'll probably be harder, but then I still think that I could possibly win then. But and that's also part of building a movement, is just like making sure that you're contacting the same people again and getting them involved. Because for me, the way that I've seen it is the Democratic Party has been decimated in my area and in my state, but even in my area. And whenever I was a kid, whenever I was a kid, our governor, he was from my hometown. He was a Democrat, and he won in 2002, and then in 2006, he won re-election with 66% of the vote and won in every county except for the 3 in the Panhandle. And Brett Henry is his name. He was no conservative Democrat. He was a moderate, sure, but he was pro-choice. and he vetoed anti-abortion bills.
Oh,
And
wow.
he was, yeah. So like he was also my state senator. Whenever I was born, my state senator was a Democrat. My state rep was a Democrat. Like, this was a blue area, and over time, it's just become red, and no one's really trying to fight back. And I feel like part of the way to fight back is just have someone wanting to put in the hard work to try to flip one of the bluish, reddish, purplish seats in the area. And when you start doing stuff like that, like, you're building a movement, maybe not so much just for the Democratic Party, because, that's just a vessel that we're using here. It's about actually building people power, letting people know what your government's doing and how you can possibly, what you could possibly do to change that. So that's kind of my thoughts on that in terms of building a broader movement and keeping people engaged and future plans.
Well, Greg, thank you for taking the time to come talk with us today. And it's not that you're a Democrat that I can't stand you. It's that you're a fan of Limp Bizkit that I can't stand you.
Got the poster behind me too.
That's really what it is. It's not your politics. It's
Your
just your
music
taste
was
in music. It's just your taste in music. That's all it is.
So your
Which
election is in your election's in November. And
Yeah,
how do
November 8th.
how do we donate to you for the audio listeners?
So you can go to my campaign website and go to the donate button, and there's an ActBlue link that you can click on and donate to, or you can mail in a check and write it out to Friends for Gregory Hardin 2022. Or you can go to my Twitter, which is at Gregory Hardin 2nd, and I'm pretty sure my pinned tweet probably has a ActBlue link that you could donate to. My website is gregory4hd26.com.
Your
And
pinned
yeah,
tweet says you're hiring interns.
I am, or was at the time whenever I tweeted it. I do have interns, and I will be paying them. So if
Paid interns with an S. This is a
Oh
big
my
time
goodness.
campaign. Like, no shit.
You are getting. Are you taking
That's-
those campaign donations and actually putting it in the campaign? Because I just assumed you were buying Jinko jeans with them.
no, I don't even like Jankos. Okay, I'm not that far gone when it comes to new metal. I
Look,
reject
man, I know
Jankos.
you're wearing a wallet chain right now. That's where the static was coming.
Yes. Wow.
No, that's legit. And like the thing is, I think there's there's a lot of campaigns that get hit on because of like labor practices, work. I think like campaigns are tough. I think if you're a work campaign, like it's gonna suck because of just like where it comes. Like you got to just work so much within a small period of time. But good on you, like for just like doing the right thing and like literally building it out the right way, because that's what it actually takes, is making something real. Say, yeah, if you're coming to work for me, you're gonna get paid for it, like no doubt. And that, like, where what sucks is that sometimes if you don't get the support, which is why, chat, you need to help Greg out, is that Greg's probably not a slave driver, and so if he doesn't get the support in order to support the people that work for him, then he doesn't get those people to work for him. Like, and that's
Speak for yourself, Marcus. He starts telling those people what to do. He sounds like Colonel Sanders. I say, are you making phone calls today?
But no, I also wanted to add that if anyone plans on donating, small monthly donations are encouraged. So if you're wanting to give money, but you don't have a lot of money to give, and you want to give $5, hold on, let me fix the static before. Let me get rid of my wallet. Is the static on now?
It's gone.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, but no. But if you have some money to give and you just want to give $5 or something like that, do it monthly. Make it recurring. So therefore, $5 this month, August, September, October, November, ends up being $25 that you end up giving me in the end, but it's recurring. So I would encourage that. I mean, if you have a lot of money and you want to give $200, it'd be great too. Anything helps.
Well, before we go, the question that all Oklahomans really want to know, that really separates you from the frauds: Taco Bell or Taco Bueno?
Oh, neither. I don't really like tacos.
Ooh, Jason just died a little inside.
I've never even heard of Taco Bueno. What the fuck is that?
It exists. It's a place we have one in
Oklahoma,
Shawnee.
in
Yeah.
Texas. Okay, Whataburger or In-N-Out?
Okay. Ooh, I've never been to an In-N-Out, so Whataburger.
There you go. That's all you needed to say.
Even though I will say this because I really need to not give Texas that win there. Sonic Drive-In, the first Sonic that was ever made, is in my hometown.
Yeah,
it's in my hometown actually.
Damn.
So yeah,
it is an Oklahoma company. Yeah, there you go. So, I should have asked that question. Let me ask it properly so the Oklahomans can know that you're about that life. Sonic or Whataburger?
Sonic.
Cherry limeade or orange sunshine?
I don't really like either. So
Greg, I'm trying to get you a win here with white.
Hey, I interjected
you keep
about
punching
Sonic.
yourself in the dick.
Exactly. And I'll just
I interjected about Sonic, so you wouldn't even let me just have that win. Okay?
That's true.
Now you're pushing.
If it's this or that,
you're trying to go for a recount now. I already said Sonic.
You got to give the political answer, where it's I respect all slushies, Slurpees, all types of mixed drinks that are frozen in variety, daiquiris. Got a strong respect for that mixed beverage history. And then
Greg,
just move on from there.
You know I appreciate you, and I really like hanging out with you and giving you a hard time, as I have to pay you back for that interview that I did with you, where you quizzed me on everything about distorted guitar for 2.5 hours. So please, if you guys like heavy music, this wonderful young man wanted to talk to me. I thought he wanted to talk to me about politics and stuff. He's like, "No, Grandpa, I want to talk to you about why you suck." So I had a great time talking with Greg, and I told him that I was going to bring him on. So finally, he did the poke to me enough.
Greg, I really enjoyed talking to you, man. I hope you enjoyed being on our show today.
I did. Thank you for having me on. This has been the most fun I've had in a while.
And now you're prepared to handle your conservative opponent. You are armed and ready, because once you pass the gauntlet of, Marcus, Pascal, Toussaint, and Jay, no one can stand in your way. And on that note, we are out.